All right, welcome to another day of software estimation and measurement. This is Dr. Carroll. Today we're going to be talking about outsourcing. Here's a look at the calendar, current snapshot for today, with a paper review and discussion due today, as well as a quiz for Chapter 10. And then looking forward on Tuesday, there's another paper due, and I hope to post the quiz shortly for Chapter 11. Okay. Right now, my plans for the final are a project. I need to work through the project to make sure it'll work. But that's the current plans, but don't quote me on that. Tune in next week for an update. All right. So, what is outsourcing? Anyone? We don't know. Anyone in the back? Okay, so do you already have an opinion about outsourcing? So we're gonna be talking about it today. So outsourcing is a business decision, okay? And so you may be asking, well, how prevalent is outsourcing? Well, I've got a graphic that I think helps to illustrate that. Let me pull it up. Okay, here's the global market size of outsourced services for the last, for 17 years. Okay, what do you notice here? Notice the x-axis is years. There was something funny going on with 2016, and the y-axis is revenue in billions of US dollars. So I don't know about your monthly budget, but billions of US dollars is a lot, okay? But notice this trend. How would you generalize this trend? From 2000 to 2012, it increased every year. You have a little blip in 2013 where it dropped significantly, then it rose again, but then it dropped. So there has been a steady increase of outsourcing over the last 2 decades in general. And it's still very prevalent, a very large business revenue in terms of business revenue. But in the last couple of years, I think opinions have started to shift a little bit on outsourcing. Now, the textbook was written like 2006 or something, so you need to understand that the perspective of the authors at that time is a little different than where we sit here in 2018 in terms of outsourcing. In terms of projections, I don't think projections back in 10 years ago would have predicted increases and then decreases of 25% from 2014 to 2016. For example. And so people are, in my opinion, are looking at outsourcing a little differently than they did before. Now, let's look at outsourcing from a different point of view. So what countries are leading the way, or where is outsourcing going to? Okay, so here at the top is India, and then China, and then Malaysia, and then Brazil, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Mexico, Chile, Poland, and United States is on there. But with it changed up from where it is, and this graphic is produced by Statista from other people's data, and I have the references here for that, and to give credit where credit is due. So we talked about the increase and decrease. The textbook authors indicate that a key problem area is that many buyers still do not have effective metrics and measures in place to gauge the success of their outsourcing initiatives. So metrics have been a class motif, a recurring pattern over much of the lectures, and so it will continue today that metrics are very important to be able to be successful with outsourcing, or to be able to evaluate it properly. So let's talk more about what is outsourcing. Outsourcing, defined by the textbook authors, is using resources external to your business to accomplish some portion of your software project. Of course, the focus here is a software project. So if we actually set aside our previous notions of outsourcing, using external resources external to your business. So if you're a software company manager, what do you do for payroll? Do you write your own payroll system? No. Probably not. You're going to outsource it. Okay, you're going to buy some established product, because that's not what you're about. You're not about payroll. What about your own operating system? You going to write that? Probably not. That's probably not. There's few companies that's in their main mission. So you're going to outsource it. You're going to just purchase it or download it if it's freeware. And so I like that, to say, oh, hey, maybe outsourcing isn't what I thought it is. The textbook suggests that maybe it could have been called third-party utilization and management. Oh, okay, well that feels better about talking about, your office suite and you're using that in your operating system and your management software, and catering. For your company functions, do you provide your own catering, or do you hire? You hire that out. That's not your business. You're a software company. You shouldn't be specializing in gourmet dishes. Okay, if you are, we need to talk. I'll do some taste testing for you, and then I'll tell you that's not part of your core competency. Another way to talk about this is supplier management. Okay, so outsourcing has connotations. You can find lots of comics about it. But supplier management, now that sounds academic and rigorous. That sounds very different, at least to me. And so this can be from using pre-boxed software to custom-built software, and we'll talk more about that. So then, what is outsourced? What do we outsource? I've named a couple. And so it could be developing and supplying platform level code. It could be manufacturing and supplying hardware. That's probably not in your main business focus. Could be in providing development environments, maintaining development environments, providing and maintaining test environments. These are things that are outsourced. Developing and supplying application level code for inclusion in the product, some subset of what you're attempting to do. I think this is probably the most commonly thought of one, is customer service. Okay, is being outsourced, and that's typically post-delivery of the product. Maintaining code could be outsourced after the product is delivered. It could be disaster recovery services to get back on track when things happen. So there's a wide range of what can be outsourced. So in general, it's a technology or skill set that's not readily available in-house. Meaning, that's what you should think of when you're thinking about outsourcing. Is we don't have that skill, we don't have that technology set already in our team or our company, okay? Or a service, the catering, for example, that's an extreme example. That one's easy to identify, but something closer to home in terms of software, maybe you don't have a web development front expertise in-house. Maybe you don't have SQL skills in-house. Maybe you don't have assembly skills in-house. It just kind of depends on what the needs are. And then there's also, well, even if you do have some of those skills, it can make sense to use some supplier if it's more cost effective or faster, meaning you can develop your product faster by having a supplier produce or deliver some part of that. And faster is important. So let's talk about benefits. So outsourcing should be motivated by meeting a goal. And that goal is shareholders, the people that actually provide the financial backing for the company, and or the customers. Sometimes it's a win-win. Sometimes it's, well, this really won't make a financial difference, but it'll make our customers happy, which is good long-term. And so if we can provide better service to our customers without an immediate financial impact, that's still a win. So let's talk about benefits and costs. First, let's be positive. Let's talk about the benefits. So what's a benefit from outsourcing? Class? What do you think of when you think of why would somebody outsource? Why would somebody purchase something, service, or a product?
Because they don't have it.
Because they don't already have it, okay? But right, that's one area. And so let me talk about some categories of where benefits are. I think most people think money when they think of benefits of outsourcing. Okay, so and typically what is cited is the lower labor rate. For example, I was reading the other day that for electronics manufacturing, that Chinese wages are $1.30 US $1.32 per hour, whereas if you were to get manufacturing labor in the US, it's $22 an hour. $1.32 an hour, $22 an hour. It's a lot cheaper in terms of lower labor rate. There's more flexibility in terms that you can try something out, or you can have something on demand. That's a new term. I don't know that that was really out when the textbook was published. In terms that you can say, hey, we're thinking about trying this. Let's see how it works. You could contract to the first one to be done, and then say, oh, that great product, we're not going to do that again. Or we don't want to bring those expertise in-house. We don't want to hire somebody for that. Or we just have this one specialty, or we have some time conflict or something. And so you can be flexible, saying, hey, we want to double the size of our team for this one product, and then we want to scale it back. Well, that sounds like contracting out that team could be very beneficial to grow the team temporarily. You might want to be avoiding capital costs, so postponing constructing a new building or purchasing some technology or other things. It can often be for avoiding hiring or training costs. So as I mentioned, what if you only needed a new skill for 4 to 12 months, and then you did not envision needing that same skill set? Well, do you hire somebody for 4 months? What percentage of that 4 months are they going to be training on company culture and technology and business practices to then they be done in for a total of 4 months. That's a very short time frame. Another reason under financial is higher productivity. So if it's a non-core competency, then you can be more productive in what is your core competency. And so one way to look at it is, well, what if it's not mainstream, not what your company's really good at, but maybe it's what your supplier is really good at. Maybe they do a great job of customer service, or they do a great job of producing this type of software. And so while it's not what your company does really well, it could be what another company does really well. So that's all under financial. Let's talk about core competency. So you should focus as a company on what you do well. And you should give effort to that, and you should stay focused. If you start to diverge from your focus, then that'll be evident in your quality and your direction. A company cannot be all things, and so they need to be focused on what they do and deliver that well. And so, for example, one is maybe support. Do you already have a well-functioning support team? If not, maybe that would make sense to contract that out. Another benefit can be faster production. So if you're trying something new, or you want something done faster, then outsourcing to another company that has a track record could save you time. And you've probably heard the idiom, time is money. So if you can get a product to market 6 months faster, that means that's 6 months sooner that you can start collecting that revenue. And especially if you're in a competitive market, that 6 months could be crucial in terms of market share, branding, and things like that. Another reason would be higher quality. In terms of, well, we could do this, but we could contract it out to somebody that does it really well and have a higher quality. So for example, maybe you don't have any real artistic talent in your company, so the artistic component of your web design maybe is contracted out, and so then you have a much higher quality product. And when it's higher quality, that's going to be more money, okay? And we're talking businesses, so money is important. So those are benefits. Now let's talk costs, okay? So there needs to be a realistic acknowledgement of the cost. Too often it's, well, what's their labor rate versus ours, and therefore we should do it. So there is cost. So for example, in labor, in terms of personnel employees, so if one of your goals is to reduce the number of employees to save money, and we need to be clear, is that one of the goals? Is that what we're trying to do? Or is it only to add an expertise that we don't have? Those are very different. If we're actually trying to reduce costs, and we will be letting employees go, have we calculated the cost for severance packages? And then what about for lost morale? If you're working somewhere and a good friend in another department, or the person that had the desk next to you was let go, what does that do for morale? If they were your friend and you looked forward to seeing them. So those costs are harder to manage, but should be taken into account. And if you're letting somebody go, what is the notification window that you have to give them notice to say, hey, your job will be terminated on this day? So a cost is management. Who's going to manage the new supplier? Do we need to create a new position, or has the responsibilities of somebody in management increased and they need more help, more support? How often are we going to have a review of metrics? Well, if you're reviewing them with the supplier, that takes time. And so especially for a large contract, you could imagine having dedicated personnel for that. So in surveys that have been done, monthly is the most common for reviewing metrics. Some are more frequent and some are less frequent. Depends on the nature of what you're trying to do, and we'll talk about that later. There is costs of documentation and training. So in your team, you know how things work, but what if you're handing it over to another team? One of the benefits mentioned was of avoiding training. Well, it's also a benefit and it's a cost. We can't just, here you go, good luck. That's not going to be successful. And so there is the training cost for this new team. Do we need to produce new documentation and or training for the supplier that doesn't exist, and that takes money to produce those? Do we need to budget time and or training for the product that the supplier will deliver? So they deliver you something to it, do we need to add in time and money into the schedule for understanding the product we were given and integration and other things? If it's an international outsourcing, then does there need to be cultural training for those that are going to interface to make sure that the different cultures are understood and respected, in part to be successful, to understand that in this culture it's okay to do this, or this is commonplace, or even etiquette on the phone and in meetings and at dinners, that sort of thing. Another real cost is infrastructure. Is there hardware, software, networking equipment that is needed? What about office space? Do we need to create more office space? Do we need an office for that? What about when they're going to deliver the product? Let's say you're in a competitive market and you're worried about your competitors. How are you going to securely transmit the product to you? Do we need to invest in the network and security? Is it already sufficient? How is it on the other end? What about travel? Who is going to travel? How often? And when? When are they going to travel in terms of regularly? When are they going to unplanned travel to mitigate a solution? So Diamond Cluster produced a survey. They produced a survey in 2005, IT Global Outsourcing Survey. They reported that 42% of companies that outsourced had quarterly on-site visits. Well, if you're outsourcing to that #1 country, India, that's halfway around the world. That's 2 days of travel, 1 day to get there, 1 day back, let alone the jet lag. And then, so there's just the cost of getting there, not only of the airfare, hotels, etc., but also your personnel, whoever you send, is not doing other things. They're sitting on an airplane for a lot of that time. And maybe you have some management that would love to travel and they're all for outsourcing so that they have to travel. You need to be careful of that too. Another cost is transitioning. There's reduced productivity at the beginning, at the end of an outsourcing effort. There's reduced quality during transitions. So that's just to be expected as we introduce something new or it transitions, that there's going to be a quality difference. We need to adjust defect estimations appropriately. If we've changed it from in-house to outsourcing, we can expect the default estimation to be different. So that's benefits and costs. Questions? Okay, let's talk about managing the risks. Okay, so a key to managing risks is to understand the key factors here. So let's talk about the key risk factors. So one of them is the supplier's location. How is the government stability? About 20 years ago, I was in school, and a guest speaker came in that was doing international business. Now this is 20 years ago. And he, if I remember correctly, he said he lost $1 million American because they were transferring money and it went through a Russian bank that collapsed while his money was being transferred through that bank. Had it been the day before, the day after, it would have been fine. But the bank failed on the day that his $1 million was going through, and so he was out that money. So what's the stability of the country? What about legal protections and legal system in terms of contracts? Is it supportive of the suppliers? Is it supportive of which party? Can you expect justice? And so those are things to take into consideration. And again, does management want to travel to this location often? So another one is the supplier's financial stability. Okay, well, you have the country or the location, but what about the company itself? So Dun & Bradstreet has ratings and reports, and their website is dnb.com, and you can go here and you can understand about the credit worthiness of a company, and this is what they do. And so you can learn a lot about this company you're dealing with. Are they about to go under? Are they a large corporation that is very financially secure? It just depends. So what is their track record? So do they have quality on-time delivery? What's their service track record? Ask for customer references. Call those references. Ask for historical data about the supplier's performance, and see, does it match up with what you've heard and what you require and demand? What's the maturity of the supplier's processes? We've talked about maturity with assessing our own risks based on maturity and experience. So naturally, we would apply those to a supplier in terms of, is this their first time? Have they been doing it for 20 years? Those are very different scenarios. Do they have certain certifications that can help you feel more comfortable with this? An ISO 9001 or a capability maturity model integration level, a CMMI level? Do they have those that can tell us more about the maturity of their processes? Well, what about the maturity of their product or the service they're actually delivering? Is this a new product or a service? Will it have bugs or hiccups or kinks to work out? If it's new, then you should expect that. If it's been done 100 times before, expect a lot less. Also, when are they planning on stopping support? It's an important conversation to have. Risk factors, communication. Communicate especially your expectations. I have learned in life that when you do not know your expectations, you will probably feel like they were not met. If you do not know what your expectations are, you're probably going to feel like they weren't met. And so communicate what are your expectations so that you can be on the same page. And one of the best ways to do that is the contract or service level agreement, SLA. And that's your legal communication, if it's written down and agreed upon. So let's summarize supplier risks. So there's two dimensions. There's the level of customization, and so a higher customization is higher risk. Why? As you are asking your supplier to do something that's more customized, why is that a higher risk? It doesn't change their location. It doesn't change their financial stability. It does change their track record in terms like, yeah, I'm sure we can do that. Yeah, I'm sure. Like, really? You know, have you never done this before? And so then that gets at the maturity of their processes and their products. And so with higher customization, the risk is higher. The other dimension to talk about is the level of integration. So the higher the integration, meaning the more that what they are producing is an integral part of what you're trying to produce and sell, the higher that has to fit just right together, the higher the risk. If it's something external and it can just be added on and there's minimal integration, then the risk is lower. Okay, so let's talk about, and let's put these in quadrants. Oh, another thing I want to say about integration is, what if the production of this highly integrated component or module, what if the schedule slips? That means the schedule for the overall product is going to have to be shifted back to be able to account for that if it's an integral part. So let's look at the different quadrants here as we talk about low level of integration and low level of customization. So this is standard usage for the supplier, and it can be independently verifiable, so it's low risk. Okay, so they've done it before. You can make it isolatable, and so it's low risk. Now, if it's a high level of customization but low integration, then it's medium to high risk because it's a unique development or usage, but it can still be independently verifiable. So what if we have a low level of customization but a high level of integration? Okay, so it's something the supplier has done often, but it's crucial component. Well, so then that's a medium risk because it's standard usage, but it's tightly coupled to the product. And then of course there's one quadrant missing, and then that's the high level of customization and high level of integration. So then it's unique, it's tightly coupled, and so it's high risk. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but we need to acknowledge the risks and take appropriate actions. So for example, the frequency of measuring metrics or the frequency of visits should be higher if we're here and lower if we're here to be able to understand these risks. Questions? I don't hear any from the online audience. Okay. So let's talk about contracts. So now let me say there's a couple attorneys in my family and my wife's family, so this is not legal advice. Okay, let me just make that clear. But this is a way to clearly define the metrics. Okay, and we've talked before about SMART metrics. Okay, so this would be a great place to apply that, to have SMART metrics, and this should include penalties for when the metrics are not met. Or you could think of it positively. For example, I've heard of contracts for building road systems. If you get it done early, for every day early your company gets $10,000, because it's a huge inconvenience to be doing construction. And so if you can not only be on time but be early, we will pay you more money. And so, and you could have an incentive program for exceeding expectations. Usually we focus on the penalties for missing expectations, but feel free to incentivize. So let's talk about 2 examples of talking about contracts. So in the contract, if you had the supplier shall deliver a product that performs some function A 6 months from signing this contract, okay? What do you think about that? We have who is going to do that. That's good, but that's generally clear in a contract. That's what the contract is about. You're specifying what it needs to do. You have a time frame. That's good, not just deliver. Okay? But what if we took that same one and we made it more specific? We said, okay, yeah, it's got to perform that function, but it's got to do it with 95% success rate on the functional test plan. What's the functional test plan? Well, the functional test plan is going to cover all of the requirements that are in Appendix A of this contract. Okay, so if you're a company and producing a contract for the supplier, which language would you rather have, A or B? B is going to be more clear. What if you are the supplier? Which one would you rather have? So B does have the advantage. From a supplier standpoint, the expectations are clearly spelled out. They could have people that said, we expected 100% success rate at 3 months. It's like, well, you never told us that. That's, we've told you our track record. It didn't match up with that. I don't know why you're so upset, And so there is that advantage to saying, if you feel strongly you can meet that, it's clearly spelled out, then great. Expectations have been set, you've agreed on them. So in some ways it is advantageous to the supplier as well. The expectations are clearly set. Are you more likely to get repeat business if you've met and exceeded expectations? Yes. And so if you're a supplier and you're interested in repeat business, then you want to meet and exceed expectations. You'd also want to include expectations of software fixes, a date for 100% functionality, and other things as well. So there's 3 main areas I want to talk about for metrics: progress, quality, and responsiveness. So progress metrics are similar to internal schedule metrics. That's what we talked about last time. It could be as simple as percentage of work or modules completed or tested, or more sophisticated metrics like we talked about last time. Another area of metrics is quality metrics. You could have some technical examples, could be something like transactions per some time unit, or user response time, or others. In general, you could have maximum number of open defects at any time, or the mean time to failure, or others. A third area of metrics that you're going to want is responsiveness. So what's the average and maximum time to restoration of service, or for fixing a defect? So let's talk about 2 examples to help illustrate this. And they're extreme, and that's on purpose. So example 1 is a prepackaged additional component, okay? So you can imagine, well, how does that relate to our quadrants up here? If it's a prepackaged, it's something you can basically just go on their website and purchase, and then include into your production. What quadrant are we talking about? The two dimensions are level of customization and level of integration. So customization, where does it fit? Low or high or medium?
Additional components, high.
So
Customization.
for the supplier, is this a customized job or not? If you can just go to their website and purchase it, they're selling the exact same thing to lots of people. And so customization is very low because they're selling it to several people or making it available to several people. So we're in the low column here for risk. What about integration? It's an additional component instead of an integrated one, so the integration is also low as well. So you might not need a progress and a quality metric then. Excuse me. In terms of responsiveness, your metrics might be, and oh, I forgot to mention, they have a standard service contract for all of their customers. So in terms of responsiveness metrics, it would probably include looking at this standard contract and saying, yeah, this will work. They've spelled out, we can contact them for support or this or that, or it's no, this isn't clear enough. We feel uncomfortable about their standard service agreement and you might need to purchase a higher service plan or something like that. Now let's go the other extreme. So just to be a little bit more concrete, let's say you sell herbal remedies and you have a new search module that you want to contract out. Now the company you've contracted has already built search modules, but let's say, and this is just hypothetical, that you wanted to do it based on like phonetic spelling and you wanted relationships between herbal remedies, and they've never done searching that has had these sort of relationships, the phonetic spelling and the relationship between the herbal remedies. And furthermore, for an example, let's assume that you've decided to make this the flow for to be, they have to search for the product before they can add it to their cart, before they can purchase it. So where would we be in the quadrant then in terms of customization and integration? So customization, they've done search modules before, but nothing like this. So medium to high on customization. Okay, so that means we're on the right column already. Okay, so we've walked away from low risk. Now, and the way we've designed it is it's an integral part of everything. So then the integration is high as well. So then we would want a progress metric as to clearly define the metrics. For example, do we need to do joint code reviews, demos? When is it going to be delivered? When can we get a first minimally working component? What about quality? For example, number of defects at various stages. Responsiveness. What's their mean time to a fix? So in conclusion, I thought outsourcing can be very beneficial to a business, but there are risks involved, and we need to understand those risks. Again, the Diamond Cluster survey stated buyers need to dedicate more time and energy to monitoring and measuring performance in order to identify and remediate issues before they escalate and jeopardize the entire relationship. And so we need to understand the risks, and we need to develop and share appropriate metrics to mitigate those risks. Any questions?